So the first anomaly that we will be discussing is the concurrent enrollment. Okay, it will be much of the discussion will be on demos and a little on concepts. Okay, so concurrent enrollment, as the title states, is essentially an anomaly where an SSID has primary enrollment at more than one LEA at the same time. So essentially, you have two LEAs with overlapping enrollments for a student for one SSID. So it could be a 2-day enrollment that overlap, it could be just 1 day, could be multiple days. Okay, and this is just for primary enrollments. Okay, so there are combinations of enrollments that will trigger a CCE, and there are that won't. So let's first discuss the combinations that will not trigger a CCE. So of course you have your primary enrollment. If it's in combination with a short-term enrollment, which is enrollment 30, and that enrollment is 30 days or less, is less than 30 days based on the enrollment start date at that short-term school, then CalPAS will allow that overlapping enrollment. CalPAS will also allow an enrollment in combination with a secondary enrollment. So let's say a student is attending classes with a primary enrollment at high school A and needs to take classes at high school B because high school B is the only, or LEA B is the only LEA that provides that class in the entire district. Then you can have a combination of two enrollments, okay? As long as the other enrollment is a 20. And then of course you have a 10 and a 50, okay? So a 10 and a 50 will not trigger a CCE as well. So what will trigger a CCE is essentially if you have two primary enrollments coexisting and overlapping for a student. And of course, the opposite of the example here, you have a primary with a short-term 30 enrollment that's more than 30 days already. So at that point, if the student is still at the COE or juvenile school or whatever short-term school is managing that enrollment, if it's more than 30 days and the student is still there, that's when the LEA 1 relinquishes the enrollment. They exit the record a day before the short-term enrollment, and the short-term enrollment then assumes the primary enrollment. All right, so concurrent enrollment is essentially based on ownership. How is ownership assumed in CalPADS? How do you get to gain ownership of a student? That's right. You have the latest enrollment line. Yeah, that's a good one. Primary enrollment. Yep. All right. So obviously, ownership boils down to having the most current SENR record in CalPADS, right? So CalPADS will always prefer or give preference to the LEA with the newer enrollment record. And then, of course, after 14 days of overlapping enrollment, it will essentially give the onus of fixing a CCE to the original LEA involved. Okay, so that's essentially what this diagram looks like. So you have here LEA1 and LEA2. Okay, this is LEA1, this is LEA1, this is LEA2. And then that enrollment from, let's just say the CCE period happens or is that uses 8/16 of the prior year. So from 8/16/2022 up to Fall 1 Census Day, any overlapping enrollment during that time will be included on the CCE anomaly calendar, right? So let's say LEA1 enrolled the student, And then LEA2 created a new enrollment. In the first 14 days of the overlapping enrollment, CalPads will essentially assign the blame to both LEAs, or essentially assign the work of resolving the CCE to both LEAs during that 14-day period. After 14 days, all of that responsibility will then be assigned to LEA1, because at that point, if LEA2 saw the overlapping enrollment and they say, okay, this is really my student, then of course LEA1 has the responsibility to exit their students and release or relinquish ownership for that SSID. So bear this in mind, because this is what we will be discussing during the demo. Okay. So number one, what are the things that we need to consider? Number one, enrollment type. Number two, the dates of enrollment. Okay. Right. So here are common causes of CCEs. Number one, you just have pretty straightforward overlapping enrollment. So a student was enrolled at my district, Berkeley Unified, on 8/15, and then on 9/4, apparently the student moved to CSIS training Dublin. And of course, for the first 14 days, this would be both our responsibility. After that, I am the only one responsible to resolve this. So this is just really straightforward. Number two is if two or more students are using the same SSID, right? So this is what we call a reverse mid, meaning if we have a mid wherein you have one student having two SSIDs, this is the opposite. You have two students sharing one SSID. So one LEA apparently hijacked someone else's SSID, and now we have a CCE, or we call it the reverse mid situation. Okay, we will demo this in just a few minutes. And then the third one is if we have students who are overachievers, you have your students who want to be able to finish more courses or in preparation for college, then you have a student attending two LEAs but has two primary enrollments. So that's one scenario. And during COVID, you had the LEAs figuring out ownership between one LEA and a charter school or another LEA, because since everyone was studying at home, it was the mobility was really difficult, and so there was to manage, and so there was more CCEs during the pandemic era. So those were just scenarios that will cause CCEs. Okay, so when resolving CCEs, we just need to ask the right questions when troubleshooting, right? Number one, have we established continued ownership of the right student? So meaning, do we still own the student up to this date, or should we have exited the student, right? Number two, what is the enrollment type reported? Is it correct, right? So if we have an overlap and there is a what do you call this? A struggle between resolving the CCE because the other LEA is saying, oh, this same student is attending classes here. So how do you manage that enrollment? So you have to manage or figure out the enrollment type that you guys should be using. And then the last day of actual student participation. This is key because sometimes you have a 1 day enrollment at one school, and the student also had that same enrollment at the other school. So if that occurs, there is a verbiage in the SSID enrollment procedures that would essentially be used by CalPad support to be able to tell you guys to back off on this date. If you guys can figure out or this 1 day of overlap, you guys might as well just, exit the student a day prior and start the student a day after this day of that you guys are trying to claim. Okay, and then of course, look at the parents' information or look at the students' demographic information if it matches. Okay, so if that matches, then you can claim the student. If not, and you're the LEA who does not have that same parent, then you have to back off from the SSID and claim a different SSID or generate a new SSID for a student. All right, so it could be. So that really grabbed your attention, Alex. So yeah, the acronym is HELP. You know, we need to have a positive spin, but you guys can always create your own troubleshooting acronym. Okay. All right. So again, how to resolve SCCEs? By correcting the enrollment start or exit dates, by correcting the status, enrollment status or exit code, and by deleting the enrollment record and getting a new SSID. So these are the three things that normally happens when resolving CCEs. And then of course, at the end of the day, if you guys still don't want to or are having difficulty resolving a CCE, you can always send us a ticket and then we will mediate the best we can. All right. So let's now go to the demo and discuss those students. Okay, let's see here. All right, so how did we end up being in this section? Again, you go to online maintenance, anomalies management, and click on CCE here. Okay, the CCE uses this date. So from any enrollment record with overlapping records from 8/16 of last year to census day of this year will be part of the CCE roster. Okay, so we have three SSIDs here. So we have the first one, we have Joshua 3. So I click on Joshua 3's module and I see the focus SSID and the matching SSID. Okay, so it appears that the student enrolled at Dublin Frederickson Elementary on 9/4. So who do we reach out to in determining when the student left, if they really left, or if we still have the student enrolled in our roster? If you're just the CalPADS person at the district level, who should you be reaching out to? The registrar. That's correct. So again, this boils down to, knowing the person, right? Having a data team. So knowing the person at the other district as well. So you can always build that relationship. You could even have, if you have a friend who knows someone there, you could say, hey, Marshall, do you know that person who stays or who works at the other district? So, it's essentially having the soft skills, meaning or the personable skills to be able to build a network, right? So again, make sure that you reach out to your registrar, reach out to the other LEA, and be able to manage the data. So now if, let's just say this one here this student is here, right? But then again, it doesn't make sense to just look at this module and decide what to do. You can just copy the SSID, go to the CalPADS student details section and check the student's enrollment, right? So you look at the demographics, and sure enough, this student has the same parent at the other district. So this student was enrolled at your district from 8/15 to 9/3. So I look at my record, and it appears we have Jose 3 here and Monica 3. Now we go to the other record, which is the other district's record. And we also have Jose 3 here. So that's, and then the address is the same as well. So that is an indication that maybe the student really moved. And so you have to coordinate with your school registrar and have them confirm it. And then once that's confirmed, what do we do? You just have to exit the student. So we click on open here. And the only way for you to be able to manage this is you have the SCNR edit role. Okay, just a reminder. So we have an exit date a day before the student's enrollment at Frederick Elementary. So let's do 9/3. That was a Sunday. So let's just do 9/1. Okay. And then exit reason T160. Again, how do we know that this is the appropriate code to use? What do we refer to? What document in CalPAS do we refer to? Because there are two documents that you could use. One is the data guide, and the other one is, of course, the CalPADS code sets. Okay, that's correct, Cami. So the CalPADS code sets, you could download it here from the CalPADS user manual. Go to help, user manual, and then go to resource, and then references. So all of the documents I referred to is also here. So you have your code sets, error list, data guide, and the SSID enrollment procedures. Okay. So you can download the CalPADS code sets and then just refer to the exit category in the code sets. Okay. So apparently, this is a simple student moving simple scenario where a student moved from one district to another. And so we just put a T160 and then we post. And once that's posted, you can go back to your concurrent enrollment section and then click on Save Reviewed, right? So that's important, clicking on Save Reviewed. That way, you are able to manage this section here. Because if you have like 100 students, you can always filter the section here to just show you the not reviewed area. So if you just pick not reviewed, then that student will go away in this section once it refreshes. See, we now have only 2 here. So if you have 50, 100, that's a way to be able to manage this section, right? So we now have another one, Chantel Islands, okay? We click on this. And the student has the same name, same birth date, gender, but different start dates. So looking at this alone doesn't, really help at all. So we have to go to the matching SSID and search for that student here. So apparently, Chantel is at Berkeley and Adelante. So this is in the Bay Area. Adelanto is somewhere in the Mojave area, I believe. And so obviously, this is not some neighboring district that the student might have moved in, right? This alone would tell us that someone needs to back off from this SSID, right? So we look at this and we have here a previous enrollment at Berkeley. And what else should we look at to be able to determine if we have ownership of the student? Parents' address. That's correct. So we go to demographics and we go to address here. All right. So for the past 2 years, Berkeley has the student, and then Adelanto had it this year. As you can see here, we have Channel Island, as the name of the student, and Chantel is essentially the student in Adelanto. Okay, so let's look at our record. And look at the parent guardian. So ours has Santa Cruz Islands, right? So, and then this is the address. So let's look at Chantel's demographic record here. And looking at the demographic record, we see Bree Islands. So this is different. And they are on 787 Airbase Road, Adelanto. So essentially, this parent might be in the military or Air Force and stationed in Edwards Air Force Base or whatever is out there. So that's just my assumption. But obviously, these are two different students, right? So another way to be able to, so this is essentially, obviously, just by looking at this, there are two different students sharing the same SSID, okay? So to resolve this, you have to then reach out. I am the LA, I am CSIS Training Berkeley. So I reach out to my site and I check, hey, is the student still with us? Is Chanel still with us? And they say, yes, she is sitting at her desk right now. And so I reach out to Adelanto and tell them to say, hey, you may have acquired an SSID for a student we currently have enrolled at our district. Okay, so how do we check Adelanto's contact person? We go back here to concurrent enrollment and scroll at the bottom here. So I can reach out to Erica Garcia, Guadalupe Mejia, Yvonne Mateos, and Michael Barrett. So I can send them an email. And if none of those respond, we can always go back again to where? What other source of directory can we look at? It's the CSIS lookup tool. So we go to the Find CalPads section here. You look for Adelanto. And we have Dominic Patino. Okay. So you can send them an email. You can also send them if any of these four do not respond. Okay. So now that I have this, I could just say save reviewed, or if I have not responded or haven't heard back from them, then I will just keep it as is right now as not reviewed. So on Adelanto's part, what should they do now if they have a SSID that they hijack? If they hijack this SSID, the only way to resolve this from their end is, number one, to request a new SSID for their student. Okay? So, but before doing that, they need first to delete all supporting records that they have reported for the student here in CalPad. So if they have student programs reported, then they need to delete those. Delete all supporting records first before deleting the enrollment at the end. Okay? Because you can't just go ahead and delete the enrollment, because once you do that, you lose ownership to delete the supporting records. So you have to just go back and delete and re-enroll the student. That way you can delete the supporting records. Okay? So if I was Adelanto, if someone reached out to me and I needed to just disassociate my LA from this SSID, I just have to delete all supporting records first, delete the enrollment, and request a new SSID for my student. Okay, that's how you resolve a a hijacked SSID that caused a CCE enrollment. Okay. Then the third one is, of course, if you have an overachiever, or if you have, so we have here ketchup. Ketchup has two primary enrollments, one at Berkeley Unified and one at Oakland Military Institute. So upon further investigation and reaching out to Oakland, it turns out that the student was actually um, enrolled at some military based classes because he is planning to join or go to maybe West Point or the Air Force Academy or go to Annapolis once he graduates high school. So with this, you can coordinate with Oakland Military. Oakland Military can say, okay, we'll just, since they're only getting two classes here, we will change our enrollment to what again? How can how can we resolve this? How can we maintain two open enrollments and not trigger a CCE? Yes, we set that as the secondary enrollment. So Oakland can go ahead and change their enrollment to a 20. Okay, so that's how to resolve CCEs. I have another, oh, not this. I have another demo. Where was my window here? Okay, so my cheat sheet, I have another one here. CCE with a short-term enrollment. Okay, so let's just assume that this student's enrollment at the short-term school already lapsed, right? So today is the 17th. This will trigger a CCE tomorrow. Why? Because this is beyond the 30-day enrollment. Okay, so right now it hasn't triggered a CCE yet, but this is a common scenario wherein you have a 10 and a 30 at the same time. Once you have a CCE triggered, you can reach out to the other LEA, tell them, hey, is the student still attending classes there? How many more days should is the student attending? And they say, yeah, this will be, may take 2 months or 3 months. Then by that time, you just have to exit your enrollment to either to a day before 9/18 and use the appropriate exit reason code. So again, we go to the CalPAS data guide or CalPAS user code sets, but I'd rather go to the data guide. Okay. Okay. In the data guide, if you do a Control F and go to headings here and look at appendices, Appendix B here will tell us the appropriate exit, right? So you go here and we have the table here, right? So you can choose maybe, where was that? You can pick, you can do a T160, okay? You can do a T160, which is the normal um, exit and be done with this student. Or if it was really a transfer, you can do a T165, okay? Or you can do, yeah, T165. T160 or T165 are the appropriate codes. Or if not, then you can use some of these two here, the scenarios here. Okay, you can do T167, U300, T167. So there are some other scenarios where you may need to use a different exit code other than the regular T160. Okay, so take advantage of that document. So you can just, once this triggers a CCE, you can do a T160 or you can do T167 or 65 depending on the appropriateness of the exit code. Right, so that's how to resolve CCEs. Once the CCE is resolved, oh, one more thing. I read something here about I have three students with 1 day overlapping enrollment and no one wants to budge. Okay, so if that's the case, download the SSID enrollment procedures document. I thought I downloaded that. Let's go back here. SSID enrollment procedures. If you guys don't want to budge then and send us a ticket, we will send you this response. Okay. So, and then go to headings here. So in the SSID enrollment procedures, even though this is an old document, it still has some useful information. So we go to anomalies here. Okay, we go to concurrent anomalies, and we have a verbiage here where you have some scenarios. In what situations might be okay, here we go. Resolving 1 day or very short enrollment overlaps. LEA should use the following guidance when resolving 1 day or very short enrollment lapse causing CCE anomalies. First, for a given student in this situation should reflect the last full day that the student met the minimum day requirements for purposes, right? So if that day, that 1 day of overlap, if the LEA met the minimum day of requirements for ADA, then they assume that 1 day. If not, then they move their date 1 day before. Now, if both LEAs don't want to budge, then the resolution is you guys just back off from that 1 day that you're fighting for. So essentially, the overlap date was 9/15, then LEA 1 should exit their student on 9/14, LEA 2 should start their enrollment on 9/16. So that's essentially what you guys should do. Okay? So for Leticia, send us a ticket if you can't resolve it, and we will copy the other LEA with this verbiage here. Or you can reach out to them and say, hey, if we don't agree on something here, we lose that 1 day, or I lose that 1 day, or you lose that 1 day. Okay. All right. So that's it for the CCE.